The sound of metal trays slamming against the long steel counter echoed through the cold air like thunder. The cafeteria of Blackridge Women's Correctional Facility smelled of bleach, sweat, and something burnt. Under the buzzing fluorescent lights, dozens of orange-clad inmates shuffled in line, each gripping a tray that had seen better days. At the front of the line stood Officer Grant, a broad-shouldered man with a stare so hard it could cut glass. He watched as the kitchen workers, also inmates, ladled out breakfast. But this morning was different. The eggs looked gray, not yellow. The oatmeal had an oily film on top. And there was a strange, metallic smell rising from the food. Next, Officer Grant barked at a small woman with messy blonde hair. Her name tag read Inmate number 7412, Harper Lane, stepped forward, holding her tray tight. When the kitchen worker scooped something onto it, Harper froze. The eggs twitched. It wasn't eggs at all. She leaned closer. Her heart thudded as she realized there were small, wriggling maggots swimming in the gray mash. Her stomach turned. She looked up at Officer Grant, but his expression didn't change. He just stared back, cold as ever. Around her, the other inmates whispered, some covering their mouths, others staring at their trays in horror. Then, from the far end of the room, a loud clang. A tray hit the floor. Another inmate, big and strong, named Rhonda, shouted, "This is what you're feeding us? You're feeding us trash." Before anyone could react, chaos erupted. Trays flew. Chairs toppled. Someone screamed, and that was the morning everything changed at Blackridge, because by the end of breakfast, one inmate was dead. To be continued. A week earlier, Harper Lane sat on the edge of her bunk in cell block D, staring at the tiny barred window that let in a strip of gray daylight. She had been at Blackridge for 2 months. Serving time for a crime she swore she didn't commit. Life inside wasn't just hard, it was survival. Every single minute, her cellmate, Shonda, a sharp-tongued woman from Detroit, chewed on a stick of gum she somehow smuggled in. "You think you're gonna make it in here, new girl?" she asked, blowing a bubble. "I don't have a choice," Harper muttered. The days were long and predictable. Wake up at 5 a.m., line up for roll call, eat breakfast that tasted like cardboard, work in the laundry, then lights out by 9. But something had been different these last few days. The kitchen staff, mostly older inmates, had started whispering. They complained that the food coming in from the prison suppliers smelled bad. Some said it made them sick. Others said it wasn't even the same food they ordered. That night, Harper noticed something strange. A group of guards carried in sealed boxes to the kitchen around midnight. When she peeked through the bars, she saw one of the boxes tear open. Inside wasn't food, it was something wrapped in thick black plastic. The next morning, the smell in the cafeteria was worse. The scrambled eggs looked dull, the milk was warm, and the bread had green spots. A few women refused to eat. Others, too hungry to care, forced it down. By lunch, 3 inmates were vomiting. Officer Grant brushed it off, saying, "It's just nerves. Y'all aren't used to real prison food yet." But Harper knew something wasn't right. She started talking to Ms. Baines, a 60-year-old inmate who worked in the kitchen. Baines had been locked up for nearly 20 years. She'd seen things most people couldn't imagine. "You didn't hear this from me," Ms. Baines whispered one morning, "but they've been cutting costs. The prison gets paid per meal, but the food company's been swapping out supplies, cheap stuff that's spoiled or expired." "Why would they do that?" Harper asked. Baines gave her a sad look. "'Cause nobody cares what happens to women in here." That night, Harper couldn't sleep. The prison was quiet, except for the hum of the overhead lights and the faint drip. That night, Harper shared what she'd learned with Shonda and a few other inmates she trusted. They decided to gather proof, sneak a sample of the food, hide it, and find a way to get it tested. But before they could make a move, breakfast came. The day everything exploded. It started with the maggots in the eggs, the smell spread fast, and panic hit like a wave. Rhonda threw her tray. Someone shouted for help. Officer Grant tried to restore order, but the cafeteria turned into a storm of shouting, shoving, and rage. Then Harper saw something she would never forget. Baines, the kind kitchen worker, collapsed face-first into her tray. Foam bubbled at her mouth, screams filled the room, "Somebody's dead." She's not breathing. Guards rushed in, but it was too late. Harper stood frozen, her tray shaking in her hands, and in that moment, she knew, whatever they were feeding them wasn't just spoiled food. It was poison. Outside the cafeteria, the alarm blared, and as the doors slammed shut, Harper realized she might be next. The sirens wailed through every hallway in Blackridge Women's Correctional Facility. Red lights flashed on the cracked gray walls as guards yelled orders and inmates screamed. The cafeteria looked like a war zone, food smeared on the floor, tables overturned, and Ms. Bain's lifeless body being dragged away under a white sheet. Harper Lane stood frozen in the corner, her hands still shaking from what she'd seen. The smell of spoiled eggs and bleach clung to her clothes. Around her, inmates were pushed against the walls by guards shouting, "Hands up! Don't move!" But Harper wasn't thinking about them. She was staring at the spot where Ms. Baines had fallen. Her mind kept replaying it, the foam bubbling at her mouth, the way her eyes had gone blank. Harper swallowed hard. Whatever was in that food, it had killed her. A hand grabbed Harper's shoulder. "Move, inmate," barked Officer Grant, shoving her toward the exit. She stumbled out into the hallway, trying not to slip on the wet floor. Behind her, she could hear the guards yelling into radios, calling for medical backup that would come too late. When she got back to her cell, Shonda was waiting, wide-eyed. "What happened out there?" Harper sat down on the edge of her bunk, breathing hard. "Baines is dead. The food, there was something in it. I saw it." Shonda frowned. "You sure she didn't just have a heart attack?" Harper shook her head. "It wasn't that. She was fine 1 second, and then, she fell. I think they poisoned us." Shonda's face went pale. "Girl, don't say that too loud." She leaned closer, whispering, "You start saying things like that, they'll make you disappear." But Harper wasn't listening. She was staring at the bars, her mind racing. The next morning, the cafeteria was locked down. No breakfast, no food at all. The guard said it was for cleaning and investigation. But Harper didn't believe at. She'd seen too much. When Officer Grant made his rounds, she called out, "Sir, when do we get food again?" He stopped, his jaw tightening. "When it's safe." "You think we want another mess like yesterday?" "Was she poisoned?" Harper asked before she could stop herself. Grant turned sharply toward her. "Watch your mouth, inmate. You don't ask questions here." His voice was low, dangerous. That was all she needed to hear. He knew something. By the afternoon, word had spread across the prison. Some inmates said the food came from expired military rations. Others swore it was contaminated by rats. But the rumor that scared everyone the most was that the warden was covering it up, that the food supplier had been caught dumping rotten ingredients into the prison system before, and this time someone had died for it. Harper decided she couldn't wait for someone else to tell the truth. She had to find proof. That night, while the others slept, she sat up on her bunk with a scrap of paper she'd smuggled from the laundry room. In small letters, she wrote down everything she'd seen: the midnight delivery, the smell of spoiled meat, the protein blend bag with bugs, the Mason Foods man arguing with Grant. Ms. Baines' death. If she could get this note to someone outside, a lawyer, a journalist, anyone, maybe someone would finally listen. But she didn't realize someone was already watching her. From the dark hallway outside her cell, a shadow stood still, Officer Grant. His flashlight beam flicked off just before it reached her bars. He'd been listening. The next day, the cafeteria reopened. Everyone was nervous. The food looked a little better, but no one trusted it. The eggs were back to yellow, the milk cold again. The smell was almost gone. Harper sat across from Shonda, picking at her tray. "You gonna eat that?" Shonda asked. Harper shook her head. "Not a chance." C.E. A few tables away, Rhonda, the same inmate who started the fight, was glaring at her food. "They think we're stupid," she muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. "They just swapped the plates and think we'll forget." Before anyone could answer, the loudspeaker crackled. "All inmates, report to your assigned work details immediately after breakfast." Harper's stomach tightened. She was scheduled for kitchen duty again. The kitchen felt colder than usual. The stainless steel counters gleamed under harsh light, and the smell of disinfectant burned her nose. The other workers were quiet, avoiding eye contact. Back to work, barked Officer Grant, standing by the door with his arms crossed. Harper kept her head down, pretending to scrub trays. But her eyes darted toward the back wall, where the supply crates were stacked. If she could get a look at one of them, maybe she'd find the truth. When Grant turned away to answer his radio, Harper made her move. She slipped toward the back, crouching beside a crate marked, "Property of Mason Foods Company." Her heart pounded. She peeled back the tape. Inside were cans with scratched-off labels, again. She picked one up and twisted the lid just enough to peek inside. The smell hit her instantly. Rotten meat, sour and chemical-like. She gagged and dropped the can. It rolled across the floor, clanking loudly. Grant's head snapped around. "Hey! What are you doing back there?" Harper froze as he stormed over, boots echoing on the tile. "You think I don't see what you're up to?" "I was just..." "Shut up," he barked, grabbing her arm roughly. "You think you can play detective? You better remember where you are." He leaned close, his voice low and cold. "You start talking about things you don't understand, and you'll end up just like Baines." He shoved her back toward the sinks. Harper stumbled but caught herself. Her heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear anything else. She wanted to scream. She wanted to fight back. But one look at his eyes told her the truth. If she said another word, she might not make it out of that kitchen. Still, as she went back to scrubbing trays, her mind was already spinning. She couldn't stop now. Not after what she'd seen, and that night, when the lights went out, she found a way to slip a note under the cell door of the only person she thought she could trust. "Rhonda, meet me tomorrow in the laundry room," the note said. "I think I know what's really in the food." But Harper didn't know that by the next morning, one of the inmates who worked in the kitchen would be found missing, and her name was written on the same work schedule as Harper's.